Dobrze, możemy zaczynać.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will begin. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming. Thank you for your attendance. It is a great honor to see all of you. I am, of course, very moved. My name is Frédéric Petit. I am a French MEP, but I live in Kraków and have lived for many years. And I am the deputy secretary of the European Democratic Party. That is on the occasion of the 18th anniversary of Poland's accession to the European Community, is organizing in Kraków here the second stage of the campaign that we are calling, in French we called it l'Europe des solutions, and it was translated into English as Solutions for Europe, which is opposite for me, but it's a debate. And we are in the second stage of the campaign. Either Solutions for Europe or a Europe of solutions. So the first words of introduction will be given by Mr. Rafał Komarewicz via video, who is the chair of the Kraków City Council, and I think the video will be put up on the screen momentarily. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rafał Komarewicz, and it is my great honor to welcome you to the Happy 18 Poland Conference. Both as the resident of Kraków and the president of the Kraków City Council, I am delighted that the venue of this conference is Kraków, the city of Polish kings, the centuries-old capital of Poland, the most recognizable Polish city in the world, the cultural capital of Poland, and the city of literature and poetry. In a word, the city of European values, the symbol of Poland's integration with the European community. Back in 1978, by the decision of the UNESCO World Heritage Committee, Kraków was inscribed on the list of the most valuable objects of the world to emphasize the historical heritage and contribution to the achievements of world culture and civilization. Kraków was awarded the title of the European City of Culture in 2000, 4 years before Poland's accession to the European Union. Since 2011, Kraków has also been a member of the International Cities of Refuge Network, ICORN, which at present does not only have a symbolic meaning, but also a real significant one. This is a city where over 200,000 refugees have found refuge and shelter from the war in Ukraine. Kraków is also a city which implements the postulates of the European Democratic Party stemming from the Frankfurt Declaration. It is a symbol, one of Europe's greatest assets, in which language, culture, regional differences, and local initiatives are and must be cherished. It is in this city that I extend a warm welcome to all of you and wish you insightful deliberations. I would also like to extend my warm wishes to Poland and the city of Kraków on the occasion of the 18th anniversary of their accession to the European Union. Happy 18th, Poland. Thank you very much. 18 years in Europe. The first person who will take the floor is Madame Róża Thun. Ms. Thun is a member of the European Parliament, a real member. She has been connected with Mr. Schuman for a very long time, and he was born in France, in Lotharing. He is very, very important. And I, as a Frenchman, voted for Ms. Thun in 2009 because as a resident in Kraków, I could have voted, and I did. And is Poland Is it real? Is it an adult now? Yes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome all of you here as the chair of the City Council welcomed us all to Kraków. I don't have to introduce Mr. Petit because he's here, and Sandro Gozzi, as the chair of our political group calls him, is probably in Kraków for the first time. So a warm welcome to you. I'm very happy that Michał Kobosko is here. I'm not here in Kraków for the first time, nor for the last. And in terms of Schumann, Anna Radwan is here as well. 19 years ago, Poles said, yes, we are entering the European Union. And in fact, we are adults now. I wanted to tell you hello in Kraków. And Kraków, I want to say what it means to me, what this city means to me. Maybe perhaps this can explain why I'm in the European Parliament. And I have spent a majority of my life to make sure that Poland is deeply rooted in the EU and for the EU to be strongly embedded in Poland. I always remember these Sunday walks with my father after church. We used to walk around Kraków, and my dad was the first president of Kraków after communism. And when he walked around with us after Mass, and of course remember that we had the Iron Curtain, we couldn't go anywhere, we were closed, we were poor. In this Kraków that was always beautiful, but it was dark and dirty because of Nowa Huta and Skawina, and the Katowice steel mill was also being built. You couldn't even say, it was a censored topic. Ecology was censored simply because those who were making the city polluted and dirty, these were state-owned companies, and the state couldn't do anything bad. And we walked around with my dad, and he said, look, this is St. Anne's Church, beautiful Baroque style, built by Tilgan Gameren, who was Dutch. He learned Baroque in Italy, and then he came to Poland, and this is where he found this surrounding and this land, and this is where he developed. His best works of art, of architecture, were in Poland. So we would go further to St. Mary's Church, Feistos. He came from Nuremberg. His main work of art, he left it here in St. Mary's Church, because he found a surrounding that he could communicate with. I don't even know if he spoke Polish. I doubt it. Most people at that time spoke German, in fact. So he found this land, this surrounding, and he developed his talents here with us. And we have the most beautiful altar of Witstwosz. So meter after meter, cloth hall, Jan Matejko. The last name itself shows that his dad was Czech. You could like the art or not, but it is, of course, of great symbolic significance for us. And then next, Vadel Castle, the most beautiful Renaissance courtyard that you could ever imagine, built by those from Bona Sforza, and those architects and Decius who impacted banking in Kraków and left us Villa Decius and left Renaissance pieces in Kraków that Bona Sforza left as well. And my dad said, children, Europe is here, and it's here because Kraków was such a city. It was an open city. It was a hospitable city where others could come, and they developed here, because when civilization develops, in peace when people of various cultures meet. If you don't meet other people different from yourself, there is no progress in civilization. So Kraków is such an example of beautiful civilizational development, a city full of culture and civilization, because this is where various people met. And for the past 18 years, we're meeting even more because we're in the EU. And I would like very much, when we talk about what the EU is, to not talk just about money, but to talk about the fact that all of us together, we're doing huge civilizational progress. We're looking after common values, common law, common democracy, human rights, the future of our children. We don't want to just ensure peace, but we also want to have clean air. We want to make sure we have sufficient water, that we have new technologies to not ruin this nature, so that the upcoming generations can have something left. And at the end, I would like to say this. If you came to Kraków 18 years ago, I'm sure you would be charmed by Market Square. It was still very empty. You could walk much easier on it than now because there were no tourists, but it was dark. You had to change your shirt if you were wearing a white shirt because your collar was dirty. And it was a huge assistance on the part of the EU that our collars are not black anymore in the afternoon. The air is still not of ultimate quality, but there's absolutely no comparison to what it used to be. Today, when we walk around Kraków, we see the beautiful conference center built by our outstanding architect from Kraków, and clean public transportation. My apologies, a number from Brussels. And a tram 40 that can go up to 40 kilometers per hour. The quality of the water is so much better. In the past, you couldn't drink it from the tap. Now you can. So many roads, hotels, tons of accommodation for tourists who come to Kraków. Students, academic cooperation, they come, they go, foreign languages everywhere. You can hear them everywhere amongst young people in Kraków because they keep coming. A modern diagnostic center. We're very proud of the huge progress of treating digestive diseases in the Narutowicz Hospital, thanks to cooperation with specialists from the EU and EU funds. Prokocim Hospital, I could keep going on and on how Kraków has changed and continues to change and develop. And this 18 years is a bit bittersweet as well, or even just bitter. Because for the past 7 years, well, we have to say something funny because of the past 7 years, we're the Europeans, we're wasting everything that we could do for Europe and gain from this community because we are a member in the field of democratic progress, to be in the rule of law, implementation of community law, educating people, educating young people, educating everyone to live in a country that maintains the 3 branches of government. And instead of this, we're paying huge fines because we don't follow the 3 branches of government. We could invest so much money in green energy, and we're paying fines because Turów is polluting Poles as well as Czechs. And I look at this with huge heartache. all of these investments, like the fence at the Belarusian border, amongst others. I'm not even talking about the human aspect there, but the human suffering. If we see how nature, how pollution, how laws are broken, money that is spent for Pegasus instead of for protecting people, where this money was in fact allocated for victims of violence. And in the meantime, we're listening to people, to politicians, representatives of business, of the media, people who are trusted and who are inconvenient for the government. We could talk about minority rights, about women's rights. These last 7 years that should have been a huge progress of our civilization, and we had opportunities, they were wasted. And I say this with great pain because this 18th anniversary is bitter. But seeing you and seeing our guests, I am full of hope that in the upcoming future this is going to change and we will be able to carry out our tasks in the European Union for our good and the good of the EU as it comes for someone who is mature at the age of 18. Thank you very much.
Bardzo dziękuję.
Thank you very much, Ms. Róża. When I talk to my colleagues who believe I'm a poor Frenchman, that I don't know anything. So Babel was not punishment. It was a response. Keep looking for an answer. Sandro Gozzi will now take the floor. He was here. Sandro is now the Secretary General of the European Democratic Party, and Sandro is here. He is this image of Europe because he speaks so many languages.
Thank you very much. My point is a little bit rotten, so I mean I will speak English. I won't pretend. No, I'm very happy. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to be at the heart of Europe, because here we are the heart of Europe. Krakow is the heart of Europe. Poland is the heart of Europe. And what Rosa Thun, and I want to thank, of course, Rosa Thun and Michal Kobosco. I'm very happy to be here with you. I hope it is only one step of our common journey. And I'm really very glad because Michal Kobosco is an excellent fellow and Rosa Thun is an excellent member of European Parliament. So, I mean, I think that the Polish people should be very proud of both of you. So, thank you very much for your welcome, and I think you deserve also an applause. But, I mean, we are at the heart of Europe, and Rosa recalled why we are at the heart of Europe. After all, if you look at another moment, which for us is very important, not only as a historical moment, but as a political moment, because Rosa Thun talked about Renaissance, Rinascimento. And for us, Renaissance, and she recalled Bona Sforza. So basically, Krakow is linked to Vigevano, because Bona Sforza, of the big aristocratic family of Milan Sforza, was born in Vigevano, which is a little town near Milan. It is linked to Milan, of course, because the Sforza were the big family of Milan. It is linked to Lithuania because Bona Sforza was queen of Poland and Duchess of Lithuania. And it is linked to Bari, south of Italy, because it is where Bona Sforza died. So you see, don't get into detail. I mean, come on, she died. I mean, then we will see. See, yeah. Some people say that, but I mean, and so this is why I'm happy, because after all, I mean, you are part of the light. I mean, of course, each of us was enlightened by Europe. We were enlightened founding Europe after two civil wars, which were the two World Wars. But you have enlightened Europe because Krakow is part of, is at the center of European history. I think that, by the way, UNESCO was very right, because I mean, your city are absolutely delightful and a very beautiful city. Let me say also that, I mean, I am very happy to be here because 90 years ago, not 18 years ago, 90 years ago, 9-0, there was a big friend of mine, and a big friend of Europe, and a big friend of Poland, who was born here, I believe, and his name was Bronisław Geremek. In this very day, 90 years ago, Bronisław Geremek was born. And Bronisław was a good friend of mine, different generation, but I mean, I was one of the negotiators because I was working with President Romano Prodi of enlargement, so I worked a lot with Bronisław Geremek. Then we became a friend. Bronisław was a founding member of the European Democratic Party in 2004 in Brussels. Here, our treasurer, Jean-Marie Beaupuy, I think that he can witness what I'm saying. And for me, he has been, I was very proud that such an historical figure for your country and for our continent became not only a founding member of our party, but also a personal friend of mine. I was extremely sorry when he died in this car accident. But I think that it is for me another reason for real happiness. It's not protocolar happiness, what I'm telling you, it's real happiness. And of course, and I will come back on this, Rosa Thun and Michal Kobosco knows me, I'm very direct. And I will tell you that I'm very sorry today. Because I negotiated with a representative of Poland who was called Bronisław Geremek. Now I'm dealing with Poland run by Kaczynski. And that is for us, the European, a very bad surprise. We didn't expect that. And we think that it is a big challenge that we Democrats we have all over Europe. And let me say also something very clear. I hear a lot about attack to the European Union. I hear a lot about attack of our interference into the national sovereignty, against the national values of the Polish people, Poland, etc. Let me be very clear. It is not interference. We are doing our duty. We are respecting our pact with the Polish citizens. We are respecting our pact when we decided together to relaunch the European Union. Because the European Union is based on fundamental values. Because we have a common identity, which is not only Renaissance bona sforza. It is fundamental values, rule of law, freedoms, fundamental freedoms. And we want that each European citizen is assured that when the women's rights, when minority rights, when rule of law is violated in any part of Europe, be it Italy, be it France, be it Poland, the European Union is there and stand by its values and stand by European citizens, also against a government. This, I want to be very clear, because this is the political pact that together we signed in 2004 when Poland decided to join. It's a political pact that we signed together in 1957 because we started from a market. But we started from a market to protect our fundamental values. This has been the European journey. Because we wanted to say never again. Never again the most horrible violation of human dignity that we Europeans invented in the Second World War with the Shoah, in the Second World War with the humiliation of the human dignity. We say never again. And now it must be never again. And this is why also we are very proud of the Polish people. We are very proud of the Polish people. We are very proud of what the Polish people is doing to support their Ukrainian brothers, our Ukrainian brothers. Because this is exactly the Europe we want. This is exactly why we build up Europe. To ensure human solidarity, to ensure the protection of humanitarian rights, to make sure that every human being that is in need can have an hand of help from us. This is the Europe we stand for. No interference at all. This is our common endeavor. And I remember because negotiating the enlargement, I traveled with the president of the Commission in all the capitals. And we had debate in the parliaments. We had the debate in the parliament in Warsaw, in Estonia, in Lithuania, and then we used to go to the universities or to, youth organization to debate about the reason why we were reunifying Europe, because I like much more the word reunification than the word enlargement. Why we were reunifying Europe. Because after all, the only responsibility that you had, that you were on the wrong side of the wall. the only merit that we were born on the right side of the wall. It's not a merit, it's a chance. And it's luck. And in Vilnius, there was a young Lithuanian student who interrupted the speech of the president of the commission, saying, "Yeah, what is this European Union? We have been under the foot of the Soviet Union for so many years, and now we don't want this European Union. What is this union again? We want to be free, we want to be sovereign." And the answer was, I don't recall the date where the Lithuanian people, by referendum, decided to join the Soviet Union. So basically, nobody is imposing anything to anybody. What we are doing is free choice. What we are doing is free democratic choice. And we have to continue. I don't recall all the advantages that Poland has had since it joined, because Rosa has already explained that. But I think that, there is another issue on which I would like to be very clear, and on which, which is at the core of our commitment as European Democrats, as Renew Europe, as Renaissance, which is the movement through which I was elected in France to the European Parliament. You don't have to put nation against the union. You don't have to put homeland against European sovereignty. Because it is only through a powerful, democratic and sovereign Europe that we as Europeans, we can be really independent on the world scale today. So to say that the nation and the union are two different things, it is wrong, it is fundamentally wrong. And unfortunately, a good part of the public opinion in Europe is understanding this today. Because today there is an empire which is attacking our brothers. Today there is a dictator who is attacking our brothers. I'm referring, of course, to the Russian aggression to Ukraine. And we understand that in a world of empires, be they aggressive or be they just powerful, like Russia, like China, like India, like, the United States of America, which are a friend of ours, but it cannot be considered a nation state. They are much more than a nation state. Faced with these challenges, either we unify, either we provide Europe with the necessary power, military power, industrial power, digital power, ecological power, democratic power, or we be lost in the 21st century. For us Europeans to regain the true sovereignty is to build up also a European dimension of sovereignty. Our Brexiteers were very right in the slogan when they organized the Brexit referendum. Because they were saying, today, the most important problem in our society is to take back control. And one of the reasons why politics is in crisis is because politics has lost control on the major transnational issues, be it migration, be it climate change, be it war, be it energy, be it digital challenges. The problem of the Brexiteers is that the answer was wrong. Because if you really want to take back control today in 21st century world, you don't have to leave the union. You have to be at the heart of the union and to work to strengthen the union. Because the only way for us Europeans to take back control on migration, on climate change, on the digital challenges, on the fight against terrorism, on the fight on cybersecurity issues, on our relations with empires, on our relations with other continents, is to build up a powerful, sovereign, and democratic Europe. This is absolutely at the heart of our commitment. So I mean, and this is also also why I am, as a European, as a real friend of Poland, shocked when someone like a judge in the Constitutional Tribunal, former PiS politician, Kristina Pavlovich, say that the EU flag is a rag. I am shocked because this is so against the Polish civilization, the Polish culture, the Polish histories, the role that the Poles have played at the heart of Europe. It is shocking for me, and I'm here to tell you that I fully support your political fight, because this is absolutely something that, in our view, goes against common sense. It's not, yeah, we are beyond politics. Yeah, we are beyond politics. This is simply common sense. Common sense in 2020. I won't talk about defense energy because we have a debate, and also I want to arrive at the end of my speech. It is something, I mean, I'm talking to you really from my heart here. And to tell you why I'm so convinced, I end up with a quote of another famous European, born Polish, born in Krakow. Another one, even more famous than Bronislaw, is Karol Wojtyła, Jean-Paul II. And in 1995, he wrote something which is so true also for Europe, and that we have always brought in our mind and in our heart when we were reunifying Europe with your accession 18 years ago. She used to say that the church in Europe must be breathed with two lungs, one from the east and one from the west. Well, Europe too cannot breathe, cannot have a future if it cannot breathe from two lungs. One from the west and from the east. And the east, you are the center of the future of Europe. Thank you very much.
Dziękujemy bardzo.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Kobosko. He is the Deputy Chair of Polska 2050. 2050. The floor is yours. Good afternoon. Welcome to everyone. Thank you to all who have attended. First, I would like to thank the European Democratic Party that I work with on a daily basis, the third largest fraction in the European Union. I would like to thank Sandro, Frederic, and the entire team. A round of applause, please, for organizing this conference. In Europe, there's a lot of things going on at the moment, and this 18th anniversary of entering the EU is an event, of course. But in Europe, there's a lot of other events taking place, and I'm very happy that you were able to come here and talk to us and discuss in Kraków, in Poland, about the current state of the European Union and what is facing the EU in the upcoming years. Róża said so many beautiful things about Kraków as the ambassador of the city. What can I say as a simple resident of Warsaw? In Warsaw, they say that Kraków was the former capital. In Kraków, we say Warsaw is the temporary capital, and we don't want the capital back in Kraków. We know that. It's all in our heads. But Kraków and Warsaw are two examples of cities of success that stem from our accession to the EU. As to how Polish cities, Polish realities around us, Polish roads, aviation, schools, sports infrastructure, how everything has changed in the past 18 years. We perhaps don't even see this on a daily basis, but when you take a picture economists are looking at this image, you can see these shocking changes that have taken place in our reality. In these past 18 years, the Polish GDP per capita increased by 85%. 85%. That's our 18 years. This is the effect, first and foremost, of the hard work, of our hard work, of Poles, and also the effect of our inclusion, being included in this European network, entering the EU. That we use European funds, we have a common market, workplaces that are open for us, for Poles. After certain transition periods, they're open everywhere in the EU. Our students can go for exchange programs, and students of other EU member states come here. We're all in this European course, crossing the border that were at one point closed borders. Today we're wondering, like, we don't really have to think, we just go. I remember a situation many years ago. We were in the EU, and with my children, I was crossing the border. I went through half of Europe with this fresh experience that there's no more borders. And I observed the one time where I have to stop is to pay the toll on the motorway. And you don't have to stop anymore at the border. There were no more banisters, no more stops. This was shocking for me. These are these 18 years that changed so much in our lives. It just went so fast. And when we remember this, it's kind of difficult to imagine what it was like 18 years ago. If I may, I was a journalist, editor-in-chief of business publications. I remember the referendum in 2003 and then our entry into the EU. And we can say we were so enthusiastic, at least a majority of the Polish society. In the referendum, maybe not so much. The referendum was not necessary, but it was organized by the Polish government, a 2-day referendum in 2003. But I want to say about this feeling. We had this feeling, wow, it's cool. We deserve this. This was natural, that we're going back to the European family. We got out of the Eastern Bloc, the Iron Curtain is gone, and we're where we're supposed to be. That is where Poland's place is. From today's perspective, these 18 years, we can say that this was a very brave and courageous decision to let us all in, the 10 countries all at once. And today, let's imagine 10 countries that are at the gates of the EU, and today, being the co-authors of the EU, we're saying, hey, welcome. And in such a situation, the former EU was in, and they let us in. They risked a lot. Of course, they had access to a huge market, not very expensive labor costs, but it was a risk for the EU to open so widely on Central and Eastern Europe. Today it's very obvious for us. Was it obvious then that they're letting us in? From today's perspective, it was shocking. It was something that changed the lives of each and every one of us. Every one of us sitting here, are we even aware of this? I saw research from the Polish Economic Institute. This is an agency of the Polish government, so not very enthusiastic towards the EU. They researched the iGen, iPhone, iMac, so iPad. So those that are 18 to 29 years old, they're called the I generation. They're very positive towards the EU. Because we have to say, our guests from outside Poland, 80% of Poles support our membership in the EU. We are the most pro-European nation, member state, and we need to remember this. The years are passing. Propaganda is doing various things of the Polish government, and it's doing things to our heads as well. Nevertheless, we understand and we support this membership. So going back to these young people, they're very pragmatic. They know what they want. They're very demanding. In Polish, demanding. So they expect a lot. And they also appreciate our membership in the EU. And in this research, they were also asked what would happen if Poland were to leave the EU, if we had Polexit. And I think part of the Polish politicians dream about this. And 28%, 1.5 million people said, will leave Poland immediately. Immediately. So this is shocking because we know what types of demographic issues we have, how difficult it is for us to maintain our citizens here, and young people sometimes don't feel the purpose of being here. But such a perspective, part of Polish politicians, those that are in government, are dreaming of this. But it is detrimental to the young people. So I'm not going to repeat what was already said. Sandro, Róża, what you had mentioned about Poland and the position in Europe, our place, our position, this is where we're supposed to be, in Europe. I remember one of the French intellectualists, and he said about 10 years ago, so when is Poland going to enter the Eurozone? And I responded, well, there's various opinions. We'll enter, we won't, loss of sovereignty. And he said then, 10 years ago, when nobody even thought that Putin is going to have such a plan of murdering the Ukrainian people, and he said, Poles, think about this. You cannot be between the Eurozone and the ruble zone, because this is a place that doesn't exist. You're not going to be able to maintain. There's no future for you there. So I will end here. Poland should open its path to the Eurozone. That is where our place is, to cement our membership in the European Union, because this is the core. And Anya is going to correct me. This is the cell of the European Union, the nucleus, excuse me, and that's where Poland should be. Other countries from Central and Eastern Europe have decided this step. They don't regret it, and I think Poland should take this opportunity. Thank you very much.
No, dziękuję naszych pierwszych.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our first panelists for this, celebrating this 18th anniversary. And right now I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Anna Radwan. Yes, of course. Please take the floor. Well, thank you very much. It was a very inspiring, extremely interesting introduction. Thank you for recalling so many eminent figures. Professor Guremek. I wouldn't even see that we'll be celebrating his 19th birthday right now. So thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Róża, for underlining the Krakow's European character. But please remind you that I'm from Warsaw, we're also pretty much European. We had Canaletto and many other artists. Please visit Warsaw if you have a spare moment. I'd like to thank Mr. Kobosko. Yes, but we have the monument to Nicolaus Copernicus, designed by Thorvaldsen. Yes, we're all Europeans, we are in Europe. I'd like to thank Mr. Kobosko for highlighting the importance of entering the Eurozone. This is an absolutely crucial requirement, sine qua non. It's a very important aspect, or a key aspect, for the Polish state and its existence in the European Union. So I'd like to thank you very much for these important elements of your introduction. And you also mentioned the referendum in 2003. It took place 19 years ago in 2003, and I think that it was a key element, absolutely crucial when it comes to the social support and support for the society. And I think that the support of the society and the engagement of the citizens is key to success for our initiative. We recalled Schuman today, and on May the 9th is going to be the Day of Europe. We should only remember the Day of Europe and not some other events that are planned in Europe. Jean Monnet, Schuman, Geremek, Tadeusz Mazowiecki, also Madame Róża Thun, who is present here. They showed us how important this project is and how the citizens are important and which tools we can use to realize and implement this project. So right now I'd like to talk about the engagement of citizens and NGOs. That we have eminent guests here. From far away, from Krakow, I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Ewelina Pytel from the Committee for the Defense of Democracy of Małopolska and Mr. Piotr Gorszałowski of Poland 2050. Welcome, Ewelina. See, very good. And Mr. President, Mr. President Piotr Gorszałowski from Polska 2050. Please give them a warm welcome, also from Krakow. And let me surprise our speakers. The organizers would like us to shorten this panel into 20 minutes. We did only 20 minutes instead of 30 minutes, but I think that we'll manage to talk about these issues, about our mission, our citizen mission. Please, Ms. Ewelina, Madam Ewelina, please take the floor.
I am not from Kraków. I want to just say one thing, that if Mr. Secretary Gozzi is going to tell us about architecture in Italy, so we don't. I think we'll end that here because we'll be here all night. Thank you very much for the invitation. This is a beautiful, a great anniversary, but I do have to say that I remember strongly 19 years ago when we were entering, so the day of the referendum that Madam MP mentioned. I couldn't vote back then. That was the last year I couldn't vote because I was still in high school. We were keeping our fingers crossed. We took part in many pro-European projects, those organized by Madam MP, who worked in the Schuman Foundation at the time. I was asked to present my organization. I am from the Commission for the Defense of Democracy. And this was a very grassroots, spontaneous movement. It started in 2015, 2 months after the ruling party started ruling. And it's an organization that was very, very spontaneous, organized by people who didn't participate or act in NGOs. They were not part of the political world. In the first part, after Free Poland, they lived their private life. They were living in their families, developing their businesses. And in 2015, they felt that something so bad is happening that it's like just going totally off course. After 1989, a course that was going towards the European Union, towards civilization, this was certain. And then in 2015, many citizens saw that we are totally off course. Somebody is trying to turn the tables, the rules of the game have changed, and citizens that were dealing with their own personal matters, they needed to take these matters into their own hands. They went out into the streets. They needed self-organization so they could organize the protest marches. Somebody could bring the permit. Somebody could bring the sound, the speakers. Somebody could organize the course. And that is how our organization was created. The first hot issue was the issue of the Constitutional Tribunal. So basically the Prime Minister at the time claiming she is not going to publish the verdict. This was a simple issue. Every child understood it, that something bad is happening, that Madam Prime Minister was blocking the printer. And this mobilized people. There were other issues like taking over free media and free press and the pseudo judicial reform, but this was the main topic. I think we all remember and we followed this revolution of the people, in fact, this huge potential amongst all of the people. We were all going to manifestations. We all felt that we could change something. Do you feel that this is still the case, or have the spirits died down and we're just waiting for elections this year or next year? We're waiting for a political change. Are we tired? Are we tired? I think we're tired. Yes, definitely. We cannot hide this. Of course, there is no enthusiasm that we had at the beginning. But those that organize some sort of group, anything, they know that the enthusiasm at the beginning is huge, and then you need to turn it into work. And every social movement has to deal with this. And we, the people, we went out into the streets. We saw how many people there were, and we were certain that this is going to happen as a result, that we'll be able to stop something. And it turned out that the government just ignores our actions. So this enthusiasm started to die down. But I hear this often. And I ask this question myself, is it still worth going out into the streets? And I think, or we think together with friends from the organization, that going out into the streets has a lot of purposes. We don't believe that the government is going to be afraid. We're not violent. We're not going to go and use force, right? But it gives us hope. It gives hope to other citizens. Those that are without hope, they have no spirit to fight. And what I wanted to say in the context of our guests from Europe, a very important aspect of our protests is thinking about for you from Brussels, from Rome, from Paris, from Milano, from Lisbon, for you to see that we're going out into the streets, that citizens of Poland do not agree with the government. So we want you to not leave us alone, leave us isolated, because we are Europeans. And we are with this huge problem, which is the undemocratic government. We ask for your solidarity. We ask for your solidarity, for European solidarity in these common values. This is very important. You talked about hope, that we hope, and we hope that the 2050 movement was also created because of hope, because there's a hope for a political change to basically stop the mudslinging between peace and the civic platform, so that there's another political path. Let's remember that 2050 is a political party. It's a strategic institute, a think tank that analyzes European politics and domestic politics. And it is also an association that brings together people, and on a daily aspect, it gives reasons for hope. Piotr, do you see this?
Well, yes, definitely. But when I started to think about it, I wanted to tell you who we are as Poland 2050, especially the 2050 movement, the association. Well, apart from the things that you can find online, I thought about quoting Benny Brown. Benny Brown is a researcher of shame and authenticity, and she created a book about sensitivity, and she gave the definition of sensitivity as not being sympathetic, but being sensitive in a way that is engaged. It is engagement. And quite frankly, Poland 2050 was born out of the necessity of engagement, of being sensitive to the environment, to our world, and as a means of objection, like stating that you cannot go like that anymore. I'm working with the leaders because you need to have a vision. It's very important, but a vision that would give tremendous future. In having such vision, we tend to forget that it needs to be like having its roots in reality. Otherwise, it's simply wishful thinking. And for us, as our movement, sensitivity is being engaged in such a way that we want to, in the place where we live. There are thousands of volunteers all around Poland. We want to show that it's possible, that you actually can change things. Our movement of our movement. We call that our movement the heart. It's the metaphor as the source of life and something that pumps up the energy. And our strategy is, we call it brains, because it's for professionals. And the party is called hands, because all these three pillars, at least we hope that they will show our commitment that would yield change. Not only on the political level, not only on the level of systemic changes that need to be made, but also in everyday life. Because at the end of the day, everyone is interested in how the reality in which we are operating is changing, and if it's changing at all. And if I was to describe our movement and what's our main motivation, is sensitivity understood as engagement, as participation, so that everyone could lead a better life. Thank you very much. There is hope. There are concrete actions that are being taken. Ladies and gentlemen, we have roughly like 7 minutes, so please ask questions to our speakers. Feel free to comment. Maybe there's someone who would like to take the floor and share their experience. If there are no questions, so maybe a piece of commentary. So I would like to ask you about politics, about political engagement, because in Poland, if you speak about joining a party or thinking about joining a party, just as Michał Bosko said, some people, especially the elderly, have some sort of allergic reaction to it. We have no political education as we have, for example, in Germany. From my perspective as working in NGO, as I cooperated with German organizations, and then this political education, like getting young people involved, is actually something active. It's not something that you should be ashamed of. Maybe it's because of our historical issues. This kind of engagement is not perceived as a priority, or it's definitely not a priority for the young people, or maybe for slightly older people, just as I am. Like several weeks ago, I only entered the first political party, Poland 2050, and I was absolutely sure that this is a perfect way of changing Poland. And what piece of advice would you give to people, to young people, to people who want to change Poland, who are like kind of cannot stand what's going on, they go to the streets, how to make them engage in a political way? Because politics, in my perspective, is something that can change the world. Or maybe it cannot. Maybe you just have an attitude that you kind of have a skeptical attitude. I would say that I analyze politics from a basic perspective, like politics is serving people. We need to serve people, and right now we have a stereotype of people who are not serving people. The politicians are not serving people, and as Michał mentioned, the younger generation, and one of the most important things about all those young generations is that they need authenticity. They won't buy anything that's not authentic and true, and if politics and politicians will be able to prove those people that this is actual service, factual service, the context may be different, and secondly, it's like showing real people, that these are real people, these are authentic people, and what they want to do is actually being heard. It's not always possible, but at least someone listens to them, and they're being taken seriously. Yes, I thought that many times I saw this effect, and many people who actually enter our organization They submit the form. They want to get engaged, but they don't want to and join the party. It's just like the one perspective. Like the committee is like the first step of getting politically engaged in a given party, and also for some people who have hesitant due to historic reason, us as organizations, we are encompassing the whole of the opposition, and that's why we give the feeling of being authentic. We're not promoting one given particular party, but some bigger idea, a bigger group of people, of organizations, pro-democratic organizations. But we still like to encourage people and explain to people, to our members, to people who attend our protests, that the parties is something which we cannot simply overcome. It has to be like that. Parties have to exist. If we are to participate in a democracy, we need to have some groups that will be offering some sort of a program to us, and then we will vote, we will choose. We may complain that these groups do not meet our expectations, but actually, to be able to complain, we should at least try to change these groups. So if you don't like this party, well, start up your own party. But if you'd like to change this party and transform it, please do this. But many members of our organization at some stages become members of some political parties because they want to get engaged in some particular projects, programs, and at the same time they are still working for democracy. Thank you very much, and we are heading towards the end of our first quite short panel. I think that I'd like to recommend the movement 2050, which kind of like combines all these three necessities that are there. The movement is engaging people from NGOs, citizens, and social organizations. Think tank for 2050. Mr. Janek Krzyszko is here. He will present this. Well, if you'd like to dabble in the analysis, tackle strategies for the future, and the political party whose aim is to try to implement all those ideas and thoughts. So with this optimistic, I think, conclusion, I'd like to end our panel and would like to recommend following our actions. I'd like to thank all the panelists for being very brief, and thank you for your attention.
No, wrócimy do roboty.
We will get back to work now, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if we should continue to wait, but let's move on to the third panel of our conference. And we will warmly welcome Łukasz from Prague, not from Praga, from Warsaw, but from Praga, from Czech Republic. He's Senator 21, and he is a member of the European Democratic Party. And Jacek, and we are going to be talking about transition, the green recovery, and all of the issues connected with it. And the first words of introduction from Łukasz, please.
Nice to be here in Krakow. I've been here before and it's a lovely city, so thank you for inviting me. I want to start off with, not a very pleasant issue in the Czech and Polish relations that kind of ruled at least our public debate in the Czech Republic, and it's the Turów mine case. Well, Czech Republic has a long-standing problem with the Polish mining coal just across the border, and Germany has as well, because it's right in front of both of our borders. There is a problem with emissions and of sound, of air pollution, and water. Yes, the levels of underground water, because the wells of citizens from the Czech Republic just across the border are drying up. Because of this issue, our governments tried to negotiate about it for a long time, but didn't find an agreement. So Czech Republic filed a lawsuit against the Polish government, against Poland, and to the European Court of Justice, and tried to solve this case, which is why Poland was issued a fine and paid already up to 70 million euros to the European Union before our new government decided that this dispute was not really worth it, because the Polish would only pay or would have reduced their money from the European funds, and the solution was nowhere to be found. So our governments decided that it's better to find an agreement, and then signed an international treaty assuring that they paid Czech Republic 45 million euros. They put a barrier underground in place to prevent from draining of the underground water, and that there is going to be a supervision of the European Court of Justice for 5 years, which was not really well received in the Czech Republic, and as I'm sure not really in Poland as well, which probably makes it a good compromise, because neither side was really happy about it. Many people weren't. And at least in the Czech Republic, some of the people filed a lawsuit to our constitutional court, where they want to bring down this agreement because it violates their rights according to our constitution. It's not sure how it's gonna end up, but at least from my point of view, I'm definitely against the coal power plants. I want to see them reduced. I'm all for Green Deal and etc., renewables. But from the point of view of Poland, I kind of see why we had to find an agreement. Because Poland, as I've read, relies from 75% on coal power plants to, not on this one. Okay, well, I read it's a fifth biggest, okay. And well, why I was talking about this is because we are in a new era when Russia's aggression changed everything, all the plans regarding energy across the Europe. Well, Germans could tell you all about it, definitely. So the Poland has its issue as well about it. And right now it's probably not a good time to file a lawsuit and bring and push the Poland outside of the European Union and, well, put this wedge between two of our nations while we can cooperate, and we have to find an agreement between each other. I think the best would be if Poland in the future decided to speed up their plans to go to the renewables, to leave out the coal power plants, and maybe open some of the nuclear reactors, which I'm sure my counterpart here is going to bring up. Well, Czech Republic is not perfect in this regard as well. We rely from 40% on coal power plants, which is still a lot in the European Union. We have some regions where air pollution is an issue. Sometimes it's because it's on the Polish and Czech border, but our coal industry is not great as well. So I think both of our nations need to find new ways because, well, we can't rely on the old ways regarding energy because it's hurtful to our environment, it's hurtful to health of the citizens, and we need to find a way. And that's why I'm here and happy to join you all, because I think we can find some way to go.
Dziękujemy bardzo. Oczywiście to
Thank you very much. Well, definitely in this panel there will be interventions from the room, and we will be talking about this. So maybe Jacek, thank you very much. Like referring to the case, the Turów case. Wow, seeing the title of the panel, the green recovery with the energy of peace, the Polish translation, we may paradoxically say that the European Union, where both countries are in, they've been for 18 years, it's somehow forced us to cooperate. So instead of waging wars, political, economic wars, conflicts, that the politicians kind of pump up because it's our first war for water between the Czech Republic and Poland, and it has been raised to such a high level that escalated into the highest possible ranks, and well, it costs us much, but this argument simply shows that the European Union institutions, the legal system, the justice system is needed because it makes it possible for us to function normally, not as countries because it's obvious, but just for ordinary people. I live in Warsaw, in the Białęka district, and on the other side of the river we have people getting water from some other source because the previous source simply dried out. So referring to what Lukasz said, we can say that after these 18 years we see that the European Union has a very tangible influence which is positive for the functioning of local communities. But all this green transformation has its roots and its beginning in the idea of protecting the planet and contradicting the climate changes and the effects of the climate changes. So that's why we're talking about decarbonization of economies, of European economies, but also world economies. Fortunately, the EU is shaping the directions also for different parts of the world. So decarbonization is a synonym of this green transformation, where unfortunately for many societies, after the February the 28th, due to this terrible act of aggression of Russia in Ukraine, we can see a different sphere of the green transformation, of the green politics, which we often label as de-Russification of energy sources. We label like that in Poland, and from the point of view of the Polish society and probably of the eastern side of the former Iron Curtain is very sad, because many people like me, 50 plus, maybe slightly younger as well, we used to have a very positive attitude towards the Russian society. And several days ago, I had an opportunity to talk to one of the inhabitants of Moscow, professor of ethnolinguistics, Professor Svetlana Tolstoyeva, who's bearing consequences of opposing the Putin's policy. And she said that we understand that Europe is turning back because this unlawful regime has entered a war path with the aware part of the Russian society. Well, I digress, but I wanted to state that what has been said at the very beginning by Mr. Kobosko is that the context of the EU and the policies have been constantly changing. And 18 years ago, it was a completely different EU. And due to the progress in research, we saw the ecological transformations. We adopted this policy of Green Deal, which again was reshaped in the last 2 months, and coming back to the title, the energy of peace, as it's stated here in Polish, it needs us to kind of divert from fossil fuels that are a source of money for different policies that cause the war. And what are the direction of decarbonizations and straying away from those energy sources from Russia? Well, this may be banal. Our panel here won't probably yield any new ideas. We have a photovoltaic sector, turbines, biogas, hydroelectrical plant, and we have atomic energy, which still causes lots of controversies because many people claim that this is a new renewable energy source, and another part of the society that we belong here, we claim that maybe it's not a renewable source of energy, but it's a non-emission source of energy. So this nuclear power plants for many societies are difficult to accept, but the situation has changed in the last 2 or 3 months, and this attitude definitely needs some sort of revision, because this issues of Russia's influence on some other societies' attitudes towards nuclear power plants, the issue is still open. So basically, because we gathered here, because we're celebrating the 18 years of the 10 new member states in the EU, also including Poland, I would say that this is a good moment to create a short summary whether this period of 18 years actually proves our maturity when it comes to taking care of the economic interests and the interests of the planet, whether our societies are mature enough. And I would like to refer to what Madame Róża said in her initial words. Well, on the one hand, we are mature, but on the other hand, we're not. On the one hand, we may say that, at least in the example of Poland, the political change that took place in 2015, it actually caused an almost instant stopping of the mechanisms that were implemented by Mr. Donald Tusk's government as an incentive to invest into solar panels, into the turbines, the mills, and the elections took part in the autumn, and the legislation was changed instantly. Legislation that was supposed to enter on the January the 1st, 2016, the mill bill, as we call it in Polish. It's stopped the development of those turbines, and the incentives were limited to a huge extent for people who wanted to install renewable energy sources. So in the last 7 years, we've been dealing with such a policy of government that does not support this Green Deal in any way. And all those narratives that you encounter here, almost like very high level, almost like they were like a religion, but they still don't serve the truth. On the other side, I'd say that these 18 years caused a tremendous success in Poland, a success that was related to the policy of the European Union politicians, the politicians who wanted decarbonization, to get away from fossil fuels. And I have to say that, well, the first Polish solar panels, these photovoltaic panels, were introduced in 2013. It was a new thing then. So it was this moment where Poland had been a member for 10 years. And in the next 9 years, these installations, these plants, those micro plants, less than 10 megawatts, that were over 1,006,000 by the end of this first quarter of this year. And I'm talking about this because these renewable energy sources are like 32% of the energy mix in Poland, and half of that is the photovoltaic panels. They are important not only from the point of view of energy, of providing energy, but they also show a great positive attitude of Poles towards the changes to which were encouraged by the European Commissions and the other European Union institutions and other member states. Of course, you may say that it's all due to financial support, but it's not completely like that, because this support, in the last 7 years, this support was not that, well, it's still important, but it used to be bigger in the years when the rise from power was slower. So with having 1 million of those installations, we may say that over 50% of them are such kinds of installations that are owned by regular citizens, by families, by households. So let's say like 500,000 of families like went away from gas, from fossil fuel, buying energy from carbon-based power plants. Well, from people who are polluting the environment, and they spend their own money simply to have green energy, because these subsidies, thanks to the EU, we receive those subsidies. It's only partial. It's roughly like 25-30%, but in general you need to spend your own money. And I think that if we're taking shortcuts here, we're talking about the green energy sector, I think it's a huge social change here in Poland. And I think that nobody actually carried out research how many people out of those who invested in renewable energy sources from their own money, who they vote for, whether they're voters of the ruling party, of the populist party, or of the opposition, which has or doesn't have any program related to the green energy. But even if we think that a vast part of those investors are people who vote for the populist parties, which are in charge of Poland right now, anyway, this psychological change is significant. It's at the end of my speech, I would like to state that since we talked before, there were some ideas about programs, political programs of the parties, also those regarding economy. And in Poland there is no party that would take the green change as its main goal, main idea, that would claim that it's the basic goal of their operation. There are only two parties like that, if you analyze this. Exactly. This is Poland 2050 as a political party that, thanks to its think tank, Strategy 2050, and huge thanks to Jan Szyszko, who was the author of those strategies. They adopted the program, the Poland on the Green Path, and the vast part of this program is devoted to straying away from the fossil fuels in a reasonable timeline, not in a populist way, but also not like the current government's been saying that it's going to happen in 2049. We want to be neutral in terms of climate right until 2040. So Poland 2050, in its manifesto, Poland on the Green Path, laid out very concrete actions. I was even kind of embarrassed that such a small party in Poland, in fact in Poland right now, who is in favor of protecting biodiversity, never had it before in its program. And I'm talking about the Polish Green Party, which only this year adopted the program of decarbonization, getting away from fossil fuels. I don't like to boast too much. We did it a lot of time earlier, like 1 year ago, like getting away from the fossil fuels, but also through social actions, through education, through supporting regions that are endangered by structural unemployment when the mines are being closed. And definitely this is the idea that's related to the Turów plant. And I think that we kind of overuse the argument of the workplaces, of labor, and the importance of Turów for the Polish economy. And we've been talking for several months for switching into nuclear power plants and constructing such plants in Poland, also wind plants, and changing this so-called wind bill in Poland. So we see these chances as Poland 2050 in those small nuclear power plants, the SMRs, small nuclear reactors. And to finish, we are definitely against building new hydro water power plants, which is some kind of like our government is so stubborn to create another barriers for the Vistula River and create energy there. So simply because of the social and environmental factors, we're definitely against using water in such a way in Polish plains. And we're also against burning wood, because our current government treats wood that's actually been stolen from the forest. It's been treated like a renewable energy sources, which is absurd. And concluding, I would like to state that Poland 2050 is the only party that has its representation in parliaments, in the European Parliament and in the domestic parliament, which is thinking about making a change for a generation and not for a term in the parliament. We analyze the future of Poland and Europe, well, the future of the planet in general, also in the context of the younger generation, so that the young people would have a better life from the environmental part, but also for people 50 plus, because we're experiencing those climate changes. It's not that only our kids and grandchildren will experience that. We're thinking in terms of generations and not short-term political terms. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. If there are any questions from the floor, or perhaps reactions. Yes, just a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Michał Andrzejewski. Very, very interesting discussion. And as we are all here on the floor, we have no doubt that the relevant path for all of us, for our generation, is the green path. So to not repeat the arguments that were already stated and that are undoubted, I would like to ask you, gentlemen, because you deal with energy policy on a daily basis, how in practice do you envisage the creation of a common European solution? Which formats should we use? Because even in the face of the attack of Russia on Ukraine, we would be thinking about the Visegrad Group, where we have Poland and the Czech Republic, but we have to make concessions for the Hungarians and for the Slovaks in terms of sanctions. So we see what Orban's government is doing. And on the other hand, on the EU level, there's a question on atom, where France has a different stance than Germany. So even the leaders of the EU have a doubt as to which direction they should follow. So gentlemen, how do you as experts see specific solutions when we talk about solutions for Europe? How could we prepare a European energy policy? Thank you.
That's an interesting question. First, I think we need to focus on infrastructure because many of our nations, like Hungary, Poland, of course, Czech Republic and Slovakia are wound up and connected to Russia, but usually not to the Western countries. We can't import, for example, the LNG gas because, well, our previous government refused to build a pipeline to Poland, to Polish port, so we could import it because we relied only on Russia. That was definitely a shortcoming from the previous populist government, which was a problem because they kind of didn't believe that whatever the European Parliament, European Commission introduced was really relevant for our case because we have basically, well, they had problem with basically anything. Well, I think that once we have an infrastructure, we can import the LNG, which is, of course, only for the time being, but we need to focus on biogas, its production. We need to, well, replace the gas with hydrogen, I think. It's what European Union intended in the first place, but, well, the goal was 2050, we need to make it closer than that. And then I think we should reconsider the nuclear power plants. Well, Czech Republic is usually very positive about nuclear energy. We were arguing with the rest of the European countries and mainly with Germany that it should be put on the list of the renewables, although it's not renewable, it's low emission. That's, yes, exactly. But if we work on the new technologies of nuclear power, then we could reduce the risks that force Germany to close their nuclear reactors down. Basically, because of Russia, right now we might not have another option because even though we create the infrastructure and we connect each countries and its power grids together, we still might not have enough energy sources to fulfill our needs, which are ever rising. And maybe we will also have to consider maybe kind of lowering our own consumption for a time being before we have another energy sources in place, like a nuclear fusion, but it's for very long run to the very far future possibility. There are also prospects of new well, deep underground facilities to store the nuclear burned out fuel, which is still in the prospect as well. But we need to focus on development and science because, well, there is probably not a more developed power source than nuclear energy. Although it has its cons, it's probably the only solution right now we have because, well, at least in Czech Republic, we have some wind turbines, but it amounts for about 0.4% of our energy consumption, and there is not an environment to make them around all of our country. There is an issue with solar panels and well, solar energy because 12 years ago we had a solar boom, but unfortunately it was one big fraud in our country, and many people stole the subsidies, and well, the energy prices rose up, which wasn't good for the renewables, not a good commercial for them. So when the European Union introduced the Green Deal, the Czech government was kind of reluctant to cooperate and wanted nuclear energy because, well, as we found out, Czech people usually try to, well, find a way to put it into their benefit and not really into the environment's benefit. And, well, our legal environment was also not greatly suited for this. So we are kind of skeptical. But well, if there's one thing I think it's positive about the Russian aggression and well, the fallout of our relations is that the Green Deal, although some politicians, at least in our country, once the invasion started, rejoiced that the Green Deal is dead, which was unfortunate. Later on, they realized, no, Green Deal can't be dead. It's our only option because they also hated Russia at the same moment as they hated Green Deal. So it was which is the worst, and the Russia is the worst. So they are now all for the Green Deal. Well, to put one example, our government wanted to cut the subsidies on biogas stations, which were quite generous and are still, because, well, they realized we need biogas and we need to encourage people to put the power plants into action. So right now they are considering to increase the subsidies instead of cutting them, which is great. And right now there are even politicians in our government that consider whether we couldn't replace half of our natural gas consumption from Russia with biogas, which I don't think is realistic, but at least they want to try it. So I think it's a good start, because ever pessimist Czech governments now believe in Green Deal, which is kind of nice, I guess.
Well, I will maybe finish about that, about your question, your concrete question. You have to stop me, because it was my job during 20 years. I can speak 2 hours about that. I think the answer is infrastructure first. And what we see with Turów is that environment has no border. Okay, and when we are talking about are we in a workshop for Europe for solution or solution for Europe, we are here. Europe is the solution, because as said Jacek, we had Europe forces to say, okay, we cannot have a border for that. And when I'm hearing about big separation grounds to have to, the polluted water will be here for our children. And it's not because I am a Czech guy that my daughter will not marry a Polish guy and they will have no water. Okay, it's completely stupid. And Europe do that. Europe say, okay, there is no border. First thing. Second thing, infrastructure. For me, as a technical guy, for me the first thing, and I know that the people in Poland are completely in agreement with me. We need a real grid, and a European grid for transportation of electricity. Polish people said 20% economy. With the same production, you are losing 20% less. It means you feed 20% more. Okay, I'm saying maybe 10, but it's enormous. We have to have this first point as an infrastructure which will be a European. For me, I wrote that 5 years ago. For me, a European electricity transportation net would be a new community of iron and coal. Because it's very difficult to do. Because I remind you that this lamp is cutting every 50 times in a second. Okay, and you have to phase. That's why people are very afraid to do that. Okay, but if we do that, we will have the first step after that to have gas, biogas here, nuclear here, water here, and so on and so on. But the first step is to have a big 10 years, 5 years investment on real common infrastructure without border. Thank you very much. I think we are on time. There is another question. Yes, there is.
Dzień dobry, nazywam się Monika Matczyńska.
Good afternoon, my name is Monika Matuszyńska, and I wanted to highlight maybe 2 down-to-earth things. But when we see the situation in the Ukraine and what's going on right now, currently the cost of a ton of the popular kind of coal that Poles were encouraged to burn them in the 5th generation stuffs, the cost of this is over 2,000 PLN, and according to the predictions, it may reach even 3,000 PLN. Those cost of pellets, and it is a real problem for many Poles. And is there any way to now try to do something with this crisis, to prevent this crisis in the future? Well, we may be talking about the solutions for the next generations, but right now these are the last months when we actually can do something to react to the crisis that will be a problem for millions of Poles. And at the same time, in what way can we not lose what we've already gained, like changing the viewpoint of the Poles towards the technology? But if Poles would have to pay so much for pellets, then they may again go back to non-ecological solutions. So how? I'm aware that pellets are not 100% ecological, but still, this is a good question. Yes, so exactly. That's what I would like to say. What Madam MEP said. There is no such thing as ecological pellets. It's still coal. It's maybe economical. And this has always been the subject of research for our organization. So this ecological pellet label will be removed, and the European Union gives us solutions, because the Polish market is the most advanced heat pump market in Europe. Poland has the most heat pumps in Europe, and even our Polish populist government that calls the EU flag, well, maybe that's not the government, but the pseudo judge from the tribunal, I won't even repeat how she called the EU flag. Even this government is forced by the European mechanisms to co-finance the transition from heating based on coal and gas and transferring to heat pumps, which is the most economical solution right now when it comes to heating. Well, simply technically, there is no better solution right now. Also taking into account the prices, and it's not a solution that was analyzed several years ago, which was expensive, and the heat pump for a 150 square meter house for floor heating, because this is the technology, and it costs around 50,000-60,000 PLN, and the large part of this is the EU subsidies through National Fund for the Protection of the Environment, and the remainder of the sum is being returned because you do not pay large amounts of money for heating. It's like 25% of the regular heating price. Well, we've run out of time. Thank you very much. And
start our last panel on global Europe, a panel that I will be joined at with 4 fantastic guests, with Mr. Sandro Gozzi, a member of the European Parliament and Secretary General of European Democratic Party. Welcome. By Mrs. Cristina Callas, the leader of ST200 political party. By Michał Kobosko, the Vice President of Polska 2050 Szymona Hołowni political party. And by Mr. Frédéric Petit, who is just on this stage, a member of the French Parliament. Welcome. Are we all set already? Fantastic. So, the topic of our discussion is global Europe, and we will be, or in my opinion, this is a very fitting place and time for this discussion. Place, of course, given the Russia's war on Ukraine that is going on very close to where we are today, so the location of our meeting, which is Krakow. And the question of global Europe, which is a priority of the European Commission and European institutions to develop the global power of the EU, has been often put into question or doubted by experts, by rivals of the European Union as well. Undoubtedly, the economic power of the EU is the strongest, or one of the strongest in the world. However, there are other aspects of global capabilities that have been doubted. However, I dare to say that the recent crisis, including and first and foremost with the already mentioned ongoing war, Russia's war in Ukraine, have been a sort of a test to the European Union and to the member states of being able to act globally and also being able to defend and strengthen European values and democratic values. So I would like to open and invite you to start with short, say 3-minute introductory statements with those questions. To what extent do you think at the moment Europe is a global player and can act globally? What can be done to perhaps strengthen that ability in the future? And what do you think might happen in this regards, in this respect, to Europe in the next couple of years? Are we to expect Europe's bargaining power and Europe's ability to act globally to increase, or are we sort of entering a defensive mode and sort of defending the ability that Europe already has? And Christina, I would like to ask you to start, since I know that you have to leave us at 5 o'clock sharp to catch your plane.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the invitation to take part in this meeting. You said that, are we going into the mood of defense? I would say that there is no strategy of global Europe, because we have been in defense mood since 2004. So Europe has been in this kind of a defense position that, okay, we enlarged, that's where the European borders are, and here we are, and most of our effort in Europe has been on keeping what we have and being happy with it. So Europe is not a global force, because Europe is not dealing and has not been dealing with Ukraine, with Balkans, with Turkey, with India, with China, with any of these regions and countries proactively at all. Most of the time Europe has been just kind of in a defensive policy mood for the, let's say, last 15, 20 years, I would say that. 18, sorry, that's what we are celebrating now. So 18 years in a rather defensive mood. I don't know, maybe this is because we had to absorb the last process of kind of an enlargement of Europe, but I would rather say that we have been so much focused on our transactional discussions inside of Europe, which are often very technocratic, and we have completely lost the sight of the whole idea of Europe. And Ukraine has been a wake-up call for us, because Ukraine is fighting for the European idea now with their lives. And this is a reminder for us, because there is a country next to us, which is a huge country, which wants to be like us. And sometimes we don't even like ourselves. We think that Europe has this problem and that problem, and we don't manage that, and our lives are so difficult, and we are not managing very well. But there's a country next to us who keeps saying to us, we like you so much that I want to be like you and I want to be with you. And we sometimes just completely miss this call from Ukraine. Every time I travel to Ukraine, or I used to travel, I haven't traveled in the last 2 months, is that you go there and you see this extreme enthusiasm to learn everything, how the things are done in Estonia, how the things are done in Poland, how do you do that, how do you do that, how can we learn from you that, how can we learn from you that. And this enthusiasm is because they want to be like us. And sometimes I had this feeling that, okay, I have to really remind myself that we are actually great. The things that we have and the things that we value are great, and we should promote them more, and we should actually be more proactive in promoting that. And the second thing is that you mentioned the values, European values, in this transactional, technocratic, everyday political fight in Europe. I think we have also kind of lost the sight or you know, hidden them under the pile of directives, the whole values thing, because I don't know if we actually here behind the table can name those values clearly and agree that that's what they are. And I think Ukraine, again, is a country that reminded us what is it that is at stake right now. And the European values that are at stake are the ones regarding the freedom to think, the freedom to say, the freedom to decide yourself. And there's a country, which is Russia, which does not value this. Russia does not value freedom. This is not something that they think that the countries or human or individuals need to have necessarily. And we had the illusion that Russia, or at least the Kremlin, let's not generalize to the whole population, but that Kremlin also shares with us this understanding. No, they don't. They never did. And what they are doing right now is very clear that they are not sharing it with us, and Ukraine is fighting this. Ukraine is a frontier of this value battle, and I think Europe should really realize that it's not about whether we should help Ukraine, whether we should you know, put something in Ukraine to help them. No, this is a question whether we are there to fight our values, or this will be back at our home, and then this will be very difficult. So my point here is that maybe I'm coming from the frontline country as well, very frontline country. I'm very emotional about this thing, but I feel that the Europe that is behind me, the bigger Europe that is behind me, geographically, is not yet emotionally in the status of understanding of what is the war now going on in Ukraine. What is it about? What is it about? It's not about Russia's geopolitical ambitions. It's about our values and whether we are ready to fight for them or we are not. And once we have made this decision, then we can discuss further in terms of how we do that. But right now we are not, I think, not the whole Europe is at the stage when we understand that we are actually ready to fight for those values.
I agree, it's a sobering moment for Europe right now, and that we do have to remember two things, that first, the Ukrainians, as you said, are also fighting for our freedoms, and that perhaps money is the smallest of the prices that we can pay to stop Putin from further aggressions right now. And from this note, I would like to move on to Michał Kobosko and ask you further about what do you think are the perspectives for Ukraine to move closer to the Union, and what is in your view the things that are on the table, and what the European Union could offer Ukraine right now to make it stronger in the Western world.
Thank you, Jan. Yes, I think it's this question is becoming to be trickier and trickier, I would say, every day. And what Christina just said is absolutely fundamental. I mean, the war changed a lot, and it's changing every day, and is influencing our feelings, our understanding, the state of our awareness. We are facing the existential threat, not only for Ukraine, not only for the Baltic states or Poland. This is about Europe, the free continent, suddenly threatened by the Russian aggression, by the Russian, let me say it openly, by the Russian fascist regime, because we are talking about a new phase of a fascism in Europe. It's no different from the past, from the other forms of fascists. It's not about grabbing the land. It's about eliminating the people, the nations. It's about the all kinds of xenophobia and kind of a thinking about superpowers taking over everybody else on the continent. This is Putin's Russia, and we need to understand. I think Russia helped the EU in a way, helped to move further also with this understanding, and suddenly we woke up in a very different world, in a world where things that we thought were kind of obvious for everyone are not obvious any longer. We're discussing today whether Polish cities might be attacked from Kaliningrad, and it's kind of a normal discussion in Poland. whether the city of Krakow, the city of Wrocław, whether the city of Poznań is in the range of the missiles coming from Kaliningrad. That's our everyday discussion right now. We need to be very aware that this is not Ukraine. This is Europe that is at risk, and we are all at risk. And therefore, when you ask about, as I understand, about the Ukrainian way to Europe, we need to think differently than we did before. Obviously, we see, talking about Ukrainian accession to Europe, firstly, we need to have one voice, Europe speaking with the one voice about the sanctions themselves. We are not. We have this discussion even now in Brussels, yes, about the import of the Russian oil, crude oil. And there is no clear understanding that everybody should do it at the same time. They are talking about Austria or Hungary or Slovakia or Czech Republic delaying this ban on import until either mid or end of 24. So we are all helping Putin to fund the aggression, fund the war, and we need to really think twice or three times about what we are doing as Europe, as the European Union, because it's about us again. It's about us being attacked. We may be attacked anytime soon by the aggressor. The Ukrainian way to the accession, as we know, President Zelensky, he already applied. He actually applied 4 days into the aggression. 4 days he applied for the EU accession for his own country, and this application is already being reviewed by the Commission. But as we know, obviously, not all the European member states are fully happy with the idea. Either idea of a full membership for the Ukraine, or the idea of any kind of a special track or fast track for the Ukrainian accession. In the case of some countries, for example, Austria, they always said there's no fast track, and the summit in Versailles in Paris also showed that there's no clear understanding and joint and common understanding that Ukraine needs to be offered kind of a special way or special track to the accession. Obviously, we know the reality, or pre-war reality. Ukraine is not there yet. The high level of the corruption, the questionable rule of law in the country, the Ukrainian outdated enterprises, which would be lost, which would disappear, dealing or facing the competition from the French, German, or even Polish companies once Ukraine is a quick member of the EU. But our thinking, the Polska 2050 thinking, is that we need to offer Ukraine clearly kind of a special procedure, because this is not a business as usual. This is a real war, a war in continent. People are dying every day. Horrible things are happening, and we cannot just sit down and say, okay, let's wait 5 or 10 years before we let them in. Obviously, we understand that there are Western Balkans countries which are waiting, never-ending discussion about Turkey, discussion about Serbia and other candidate countries, Montenegro, but Ukraine is unique, and we obviously we know that being so close to the country where people are dying, and this country needs our help. Needs our help right now. We cannot just postpone our decisions. We cannot just delay and say, okay, we will see what happens then. Yes, we need to be ready with a kind of a Marshall Plan for Ukraine. This has to be in place, because it's going to be massive reconstruction of the country, because the whole of the country is destroyed, specifically the infrastructure of the country, which will need to be reinstalled. And we should count on the war reparations from the Russian Federation. We should, but we have to be realistic. The Western countries will have to help Ukraine to rebuild the country. But again, the special track, fast procedure, and offering Ukraine something which is realistic will be in need. And we just cannot forget about Ukraine and its future in Europe, because Ukraine is a part of Europe. it's not a part of the Far East, it's a part of Europe. These are our sisters and brothers, and we need to help them now in any possible way. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we can all agree on that. This is no business as usual, and there's no coming back to time before 24th of February of 2022. Sandro, I would like to now turn to you, and taking the advantage of the fact that we have an MEP on this panel, I wanted to refer to the first conclusions on the conference on the future of Europe, which have also suggested the need to move away from unanimity in decision-making in the European Union in order to increase the efficiency of the European Union. And I think that it has a huge impact on the EU's ability to act globally as well, which we can see just these days with the hurdles that the next package of sanctions is going through amongst the member states. So what is your view on the potential of that reform? On the one hand, is it feasible in your opinion? And second of all, do you think it's something desirable for the EU? And how do you think it can impact Europe's ability to act globally?
Well, I could say yes, and the impact will be positive, but I will dwell in the other 2 minutes and 57 seconds. I thank you very much for your question, but because you really touched the point, at least for those who are in good faith, and for those who really want to make of the Ukrainian case a case for European change. And let me dwell in 2 minutes to explain you what I mean in good faith. This question was excellent. Why we are discussing with a lot of difficulties the next package of sanctions? We are discussing with difficulty the next package of sanctions against Ukraine because there is one country called Hungary and one prime minister called Viktor Orban who doesn't want to agree on the sanction on oil against Russia. Why Viktor Orban is able to give us a headache? Because we have to decide sanction by unanimity. What do the citizens in this process, which is extremely important? The press didn't pay at all attention about the Conference of the Future of Union. But the Conference of the Future of Europe, of which I was a delegate, it is a revolutionary process. In terms of the participation, because there are 800 women and men from all over Europe that for 1 year they have been discussing about the Europe they want. And it is revolutionary also in the term of outcome, because European citizens, not expert about Europe at all, but full of common sense, the first thing they said, we cannot go on with Europe which is decided by unanimity. We want to get rid of unanimity in all the field, except deciding about the future of accession, because when you are in a club, you have to all agree for the new member. So, I mean, what is the issue around Ukraine? The issue around Ukraine is that we have to transform our enlargement strategy into a geopolitical process and into a geopolitical strategy. But when you talk about geopolitics, this is also Ursula von der Leyen should understand. It means that you talk about a process in which you have to have the capability to act quickly, efficiently. And if you go on with this institutional structure, if you go on with unanimity in foreign policy, if you go on with unanimity in defense policy, it will never change, it will never happen. And today already Europe is not able to function with this system. With Ukraine, with the Western Balkans, it would be even worse. What do I mean? Do I mean that we have to postpone the process? No. I mean that we have to transform Europe. That means to turn the enlargement strategy into a geopolitical strategy of influence and of support. But at the same time, you have to reform Europe from inside. And I'm very happy to tell you this here in Poland. I'm very happy to tell you this with someone from Estonia, from the Baltic state, because until recently, Poland or the Baltic state were totally reluctant to talk about institutional reform. Totally reluctant to talk about treaty revision. They say always, I was told, this is not the point. No, this is the point. Because I want Ukraine in Europe as soon as possible, but I want a Europe which is able to function and which is able to play a role, to reinvent their European architecture and to reinvent its role on the global scale. And without changing the policies and the institutions, Europe is not able today. And you have the evidence because for hours they have been discussing, those guys in Brussels, around Orban who say, I don't want, and is able to block. So this is the point. And this is why we have to reach an agreement among those who are interested only, between brackets, to the processes and those who are interested only, between brackets, with institutions. The two things go together. The two things go together. And we have to do both. On one side, we have a tragedy, Ukrainian, Russian aggression against our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. That means that it must act as a wake-up call. On the other side, we have the fundamental process. We will end up the process on Monday with the speech by Emmanuel Macron in Strasbourg to answer to the conference. We have to do both at the same time. If we do both at the same time, we will stop to talk about founding fathers and we will react about as founding sons and daughters. And this is what our citizens expect from us.
Exactly, and we need to act, but we need the tools to act. I fully agree. Now, Frederick, and taking the advantage that we have a member of the French Parliament on this panel as well, I wanted to ask you also, in the light of the French presidential elections that have just passed, and parliamentary elections that are coming up, and the fact that after the presidential elections, it looks like there's a huge chance / possibility for France to lead Europe and lead European Union, and ask you about your judgment and your opinion on the determination of the French administration and the willingness of the French administration to act boldly towards or in response to Russia's actions in Ukraine, and what do you think we can simply expect from the French government in this regard? What kind of decisiveness we are to expect from the French government in this regard in the coming weeks, months, or perhaps even years?
Well, thank you for the precise question. Well, I think this election were a very clear election. It was not so expected, and I think that we have first to say, of course, some people were expecting more, but it was clear. I remind everybody that Emmanuel Macron had on the first tour, with a free choice, 1.5 million more voters than 5 years ago. Nobody is talking about that, okay? And that we won second tour with an advance of 18%. Then I think we can go on with this issue. I think I agree with all was said, and we had a discussion this morning about that. I think that actually there is a possibility to make on the same time something quick, sancto subito, as I said, okay, and something conform to what we are. If we think about what we have to do, what we have to be, and I will come back to something that I'm very often reminding. I grew up in Lotharingie, in Lorraine, and the young generation are thinking that European Union is a kind of treaty, it's something like that, okay? But we have to remember, and when we are talking about what are these values of Europe, I'm very often saying European community is not a treaty, is a permanent mediation decision. We can come back to our motto. Our motto is united in diversity. Sometimes I'm saying we are united in conflict, in divergence. We don't agree. We don't agree. As I said this morning, Polish people are saying about themselves. I'm not saying that. Polish people are saying about themselves, when you have two Polish people, you have three opinions. Okay, and that's Europe. And yes, and well, we have to understand that. Remind that when we create the Europe, the Saarland was French. Saarland was French, and there were conflict in Saarland We want to be German. No, we want to remain French. And it took 15 years. And they were fighting the street. Du sprichst Französen. You want to be a French guy because you want to eat, to eat. And the Baden-Württemberg was not Germany. It was a French occupation zone. And in that time, people said, okay, we will be together. And if you remind and if you see what is happening, what is about the war today is about one guy saying, these stones are Russian holy stones. Only Russian people can live on these stones. And all the people speaking Russian, I am the boss. And we are saying we have 24 languages. We are saying some of us want to have gas, some of us want to have energy, and we will manage, we will fight, we will manage, we will not make war. That's what war is about. And I was very pleased and surprised when I was in the Rada in Kiev 2 or 3 weeks ago. We talked with our colleagues, and for the first time I was listening to the beginning of Ukrainian member of parliament, Russian speaking, beginning a sentence about we come back to the nation and so on. How she will finish, okay? And she finished by saying we are a multi-ethnic nation. Multi-ethnic nation. And these kind of things are what we are and what we are defending. We are defending that in such a belligerent territorium with 24 languages. In Balkan you have, such Balkan you have 29 nationalities. 29 nationalities, 5 religions. Okay, and we are saying, okay, we will manage, we will make together, because we know that there are things, nations are important, but there are things that we have to defend above. Planet, inequality in the world, not war and so on. And that's what we are talking about, and that's what this war is about. And for that, I think I am really feeling from the deep people, even in Germany, for example, Germany is also in my constituency, there is something, a very big new conscience that we have to be responsible for the world, for that, for this kind of thing. And I am optimistic. I am optimistic that the population will agree with that. The population will agree with reconstruction of Ukraine. I am sure of that. Of course, after we will fight. We will not agree at once. There will be diversion. There will be very long night. I don't agree. I will agree. No, yes, and so on. But I think that what we are, if we have some times, if we have now we'll have maybe 5 years. Maybe we'll have more in 24 in the European Parliament. I think that these things are now more and more sensible by the population. When you see what the German Green, the evolution of the German Green Party on the next years, well, we can change, we can evolve, we can discuss, we can find the good way.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to host a panel where everyone agrees with the views that are being presented. We have 10 minutes left. I know, Christina, you might have to run, so if you do, you're well excused. That's very good, and thank you so much. So if there are questions, then we have time for 2. And I see there's a question towards the end of the room over there. I can give you my microphone if that.
Hello, my name is Joanna Mieszkowicz, and I'm representative of Polish. Excuse me? Yes, it's okay. I'm a representative of Polish Green Network. We are one of the oldest NGO working on sustainable development, ecological education for almost 25 years. Thank you for invitation for this conference, really interesting. And I'm also very happy that Poland is in Europe, and those 19 years ago I was studying in Belgium when there was this referendum on our accession, and it was really fantastic that we are joining EU. And for me, this idea of Europe and joining the West was was very. I was very happy about the possibility of traveling, yes, this mobility. But after some years, I found out that, we started to fly so much. There were this increase of transportation, of buying things, was like really like. We
Sorry,
started
Christina,
to
Christina has to leave us, so thank you very much for your
okay.
presence, and sorry to interrupt.
So we started to consume more and more. And what Rosa Thun said, that we had worse condition of environment. On one hand, really, it's improved here in Europe, but the worst industry, we just moved to Asia, yes? And we have to be really conscious about our ecosystem in the whole world, like the global Europe. We are not independent. We are influencing on resources in Africa. Now we face this really danger of the war, yeah, with Russia, but indeed, we, our smartphones have blood on using resources from Africa. So there are many aspects, and of course, this war, which is very close to us, makes us more conscious and alert. And what I would like to also share with you that 2 years...
Sorry, because this is this is a very insightful comment. However, we are indeed running out of time, so if we could ask for a question, then...
finishing. I'm just wanted to add that 2 years ago we had this coronavirus pandemia, and it was also a big shock, yeah, for everybody. And after this 2 years, I wonder if you think that we made this lesson after this 2 years, and with speaking, we have this 21st century, and we still speak about gross domestic product as the goal of our happiness, when we know that we have to cut down on consumption to really survive. And this, so one of my questions is, do you still think that we can really change this business-driven politics in Europe to make the war really survive for the next generations? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to volunteer? If there is another question, is there? Hands down. Yes, there is. There we go.
Thank you once again for very insightful and agreeing comments. It seems to me that your solutions were political for the global Europe. I just want to share 2 statistics that I think are relevant for the topic of global Europe. If we look at European Union as a single economy, which is fair because it's a single market, then the European Union would be the richest economy in the world, and it would surpass the United States, China. But on the other hand, if we look at the EU budget, this is a troublesome statistic because only 2% of the total public spending in the European Union is on the EU budget. So you can really make an argument that member states should contribute more to the European Union. This would give also economies of scale. We know actually from experience, even being in Poland, that we managed to do tremendous things with the European funds. So I would like to ask you to share maybe 1 or 2 economic solutions that you think would make Europe more global. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have two questions. One is touching upon the issue of how can we change, or can we change in a global economy, as or in a global world, and the other one is on the economic solutions on increasing the global capabilities of Europe. And I would like to ask for short 2 minutes answers from each of you, and we will have to wrap up following that.
Well, about the economy first, I think the economy is changing already because there's no other choice, because lots of supply chains have been either destroyed, or the transportation of goods and also services, mainly goods, is delayed, is complicated right now. I wouldn't say that that we will give up the globalization of the economy, but it's visibly slowing down. We are searching for local suppliers. We are searching for local manufacturing capabilities in Europe. So it's going to influence. I don't know, to what extent, but this will definitely influence the way that business is done in the world globally. That's one thing. And my second thought is about you asked the question whether the GDP is the right measure. No, we do not think so. We believe that GDP is kind of an outdated measure, that it's too simplistic and doesn't reflect to today's challenges, today's needs. This is why in our economic program of Polska 2050, we came up with the idea of comparing countries according to the prosperity or welfare indexes, instead of the GDP, of the just digits measuring the economy in a bit primitive way. We think that we should be comparing countries, and we should have our ambitions around the welfare, the comfort of the living in the country. The comfort meaning, a lot of things, starting with the education, access to the education and the quality of it, the public health care, the things that really decide why we want to live in this very specific country and not the others. So we think that also Poland should be aiming to join the elite club, let's say G20, but not measuring the GDP, but other measures which are much more up to the challenges of the 21st century. Thank you.
So the Gini coefficient as well would be an example of that. Sandra, please.
Now, to the first question, I would say that we have done the unthinkable during the pandemic. And after first hesitation, we have provided a huge example of human solidarity to fight against the pandemics as European. The Next Generation EU, the recovery plan, the health solidarity, sick people transported from France to Germany or even Switzerland. After the first reaction, which was of panic and closure, we have done a huge step forward, showing that Europe is not only business. And I'm very positive about the next phase, the next chapter. It is clear that we have to fight. It is clear that we have also to seize the opportunity. We are talking about the wonderful work and the wonderful proposals that are coming from our citizens at the end of the process of the Conference of the Future of Europe. We have to fight, because in the Council there are short-sighted people, because there are diplomats, bureaucrats, which try always to reproduce the existing world. And this is why you need politicians. Because the diplomat work in a frame, in an existing frame, and they say this is the frame. The politicians are there to change the frame. Of course, you need good politicians to change the frame for the better. But this is, I'm absolutely positive, and after all, what we are doing with Rosa Thun and Dada in the European Parliament is exactly this. Last week, we adopted a new electoral law which is going, if implemented, to change the face of European democracy, building up a truly transnational European dimension of democracy. with truly European political parties, doubling the power of choice of citizens, giving the citizens the choice, the possibility to vote directly for European political parties, to vote for the candidate to the presidency of the Commission. This is something very important. And you know, the people even in Brussels say, but this is not what the citizens ask. This is exactly what the citizens have asked us. And this is why we are doing that, because the citizens ask us to do that. Because the citizens want values, want education, want democracy, want a better democracy. So I'm positive. Of course, Europe has always been a fight. And we will have to fight. What is an economic idea for Europe? It's very simple. Let's make permanent the recovery plan. The Next Generation EU is a way of promoting investment for innovation, for the green transition, for defense. Let's do it. Common European bond, a common European debt to build up a truly fiscal capacity to overcome that problem of not sufficient resources for Europe. This is my proposal for my new idea for the future.
I like the idea, I have to say personally. Frederick.
Well, I will begin with the second because I completely agree with Sandro, and I think that, for example, if we will make the common defense, then you will have to put the value, the 2%, which will be in each country in the 2%. Then I think that it's not we have not to invent new way to make a kind of contribution and some procedure. We have also to think about it, and then it will follow. You know. Then to come back to the relationship of Europe with the other country, the other part of the world. What you said about the bloody phone because of Africa and so on. I am convinced that Europe has something to say to the world. We are the only to say we will be neutral. Okay, but we cannot change the planet from here. That's the Russian point of view. I will change the planet, and I will make what I want to make. If we want to be real European, we have to make example. We have to do. Here in Europe, we will be neutral. We have to be fair, and I am very glad to remind that fair transition was the Polish idea, or the Polish apport to the European reflection, that we can make the transition, but it has to be fair. And of course, it has to be fair with the people of Africa, even with China, even with India. But it cannot be done on a simple way and on a way which is not in the frame in our language, I would say, in our European language. And you have example if you think like that. Mechanism for the carbon at the border. You can say that, okay, we are protecting ourselves. No, we are also saying to the other, if you want, and if we will continue to be in commerce with you, you will change. You will change, because if you want to sell us something, you will have to have our way to protect the planet, and that's the way Europe is working. Or the new, what France did. Nobody is talking about that, but we changed. France changed, and Parliament, European Parliament, we changed the way that we ask the European Commission to make the deal with the other part of the world, the commercial deal. We are blocking the deal with the Brazil, saying no. You have to change before, and not only the carbon, the border, the mechanism, the carbon mechanism on the border, but also, for example, clause miroir in English. Reciprocity clause. We change that now. Of course, it's not spectacularly. It's not on the street. People are not talking of that around the table the night in the kitchen. But it's very important, because Europe says, okay, we want to be better. If you want to be with it, if you want to have commerce with us, to have exchange, we will now impose you to be as better as we are, and not export our pollution. Okay, you cannot see that now. It will be long. It's a transition. It's not a bifurcation, as some political party are saying. But that's the reason why it's difficult, because it's not visible. As you educate a child, he's not a good child now. It will be 18 years.
Thank you. So using the economic power to exert power on other fields, that's something that Europe could do. So we'll have to wrap up now. Thank you very much. I think we can agree on after this panel that Europe has been too much on the defensive over the last years. We need bold actions, but we need tools for those actions to happen, and that the enlargement process in the East should be also used as a geopolitical tool in the future to make Europe a global actor and one that's effective in that. Thank you very much. We've been joined today by Michał Kobosko, Sandro Gozzi, Frederic Petit. Thank you very much for your insights. And my name is Jan Szyszko, and I had the pleasure to host this panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we are at the end of our day, so let me just take 1 minute more of your attention and patience to express my gratitude to you all, express my gratitude to Polska 2050, to Michał Kobosko, to Magdalena N., to Rosa Thun, to Frédéric Petit, the most Polish of French citizens, to Jean-Marie Beaupuy, to our team, Leo and Mathieu. I think that we have done a wonderful job thanks to you. Europe of Solutions for Europe campaign will go on. We will be in the Czech Republic. There is today our representative from Senato 21. We will then, before the summer, we will be in your part of Europe, and then after summer we will go to Germany, in Frankfurt am Main. We'll go to the Canary Island. All this to get ideas, to listen to people, to listen to Europeans, to work out new solutions for Europe, to build up a Europe of solutions. And this will go on also all over 2023, because this is our way of preparing the political manifesto of the European Democratic Party in view of the European elections of 2024. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you very soon again in Poland.